Hello, 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 hello. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Keith, as you probably already know. I'm an AP psychology teacher since 2005. I'm here to get you guys as many resources and as many tips as I can possibly offer you from a veteran AP psych teacher and from anything that I've been learning through College Board over the last year about this new design. So I designed this one to talk about AAQs, give you any information I could possibly think of. So without further ado, let's go. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at the AAQs. We're going to talk about how they're broken down into six questions, 1 point for each of the first five, and then 2 points for the final question. I'm going to give you some strategies. We're going to look at a quick sample, and I'm going to give you any advice I might have about how to prepare for the AAQ. Okay, so this is part of the free response question portion of the exam. I don't know, they've done it in the past, and I don't know if they're going to do it again. But I believe you're going to have an option to either do the AAQ or the other free response, the EBQ, in whichever order feels most comfortable for you. I highly, highly recommend. In fact, I'm going to make it mandatory that you answer the AAQ first. Why? Because it should take you far less time. It should definitely take you far less time than the EBQ is going to take you. And I highly recommend you only spend no more than 25 minutes answering the AAQ, but between 20 and 25, so you can spend the rest of your time working on the EBQ because it's going to take way more time than the AAQ. 6 parts, as I said, 7 points total. 1 point for the first five, 2 points for the last question. It's going to ask you these questions right here. It's going to ask you about the research method. It's going to ask you about operational definitions. It's going to ask you to analyze the results in some sort of way. It's going to ask you a question about the ethics of the research, the generalizability of the research that you're looking at, and whether or not we could support one of their hypotheses, and giving some evidence about it, which is why that makes it 2 points. You're going to say yes or no, we can support the hypothesis, and here's how I know that. And you're going to point to something within that research. Okay. I already said that. Don't over or under explain your answer. That's a great point, which I made. Do not write anything less than a full complete sentence. No bullet points, no fragments of, don't say just like yes, or say it can be supported. You have to use full complete sentences with like subject, object, and predicate, like the whole thing, right? I would say my recommendation, the first five questions, 1 to 2 sentences max. Do not over-explain anything. The more time you take up writing things, one sentence should be enough to give you a point in the first five parts of the AAQ. One sentence. In one sentence, you can get a point. Don't go more than 2, because now you're just chewing up time that you're going to need for the EBQ. The last section, which I'm giving them letters. So the last question, letter F, 2 to 3 sentences maximum. You could do it in 2. I wouldn't suggest trying to do it in 1. Definitely do it in 2, no more than 3. 25 minutes total. I would suggest 10 minutes, about 10 minutes of reading. Then spend the remaining 15 minutes planning and then writing. Plan first before you start writing. Don't start working stuff out in your mind. That never helps anybody out. That never leads to a good outcome for people. The most of the time when my students are getting things wrong on the AP exam, yeah, they were in prior years, but it is because they tried to do things in their head and they were like, I don't need scratch paper. I don't need to work anything out. I'm just going to start writing. This is where things go wrong. Clear your head out, then get to the actual portion where you start writing stuff. Section A, identifying a research method. So I thought it would be useful for me to go piece by piece through each one of these and then tell you some things that you should be looking out for. And later I'm going to show you some good examples of how to answer this. Identifying a research method. So what are you looking out for? An experiment. Hopefully you know by now an experiment has a manipulated variable, random assignment, a control group, and a causal relationship. A manipulated variable. That means that the researcher in some way, shape, or form took their independent variable and they split them into two groups. Two groups. So one group is doing one task, another group is doing another task, and then afterwards, both groups or multiple groups take some sort of test after that, but it's the same test that they take at the end. That is their dependent variable. Correlational study. None of the above, right? None of the things from the experiment. Two variables. I doubt you're going to see more than two variables. It's going to be talking about relationships. Nothing that is causal, no cause and effect. You'll see things like positively or negatively correlated. You'll see words like predict, predicted, related, things like that. Survey. Some sort of standardized questionnaires where you're assessing somebody's opinion, or it can be descriptive in some way, shape, or form. Case studies, a deep and intimate look at one person or a case. A case can be more than one person, i.e. the Menendez brothers. If any of y'all have seen that documentary on Netflix, that is a case study. Maybe not, I guess the Netflix documentary is kind of a case study. But any sort of like deep, long look at one person, one person's case or whatever, typically, and what I've seen so far in from College Board are things like, somebody had like, an accident or a brain injury and they followed them for many weeks throughout their therapy sessions, to like regain cognitive control. What is this? It's a case study, clearly. Naturalistic observation. These people do not touch the people they're observing. The experimenter does not go near them. There is no interference whatsoever. It's qualitative data. Typically, they're in the field, which means it's not taking place in the psych laboratory. No interference. This may increase generalizability because it's in the real world, but how much can you actually assess when you're not controlling variables? I mean, naturalistic observations definitely has its place in the sun. So, quasi-experiment, partial elements of an experiment. Sometimes I've done quasi-experiments, lots of quasi-experiments in my research history, naturally occurring groups. So there's no random assignment. Like I did one assessing freshman year students in 2 different countries. I didn't randomly assign them to 2 different countries. It was the 2 countries that they were born in and they were attending university in. Quasi-experiment. Operational definitions, part B. Remember that operational definitions, the purpose of them is for replication of your study, to be as transparent as humanly possible, so there's no questions when somebody says, well, you're assessing motivation, but like, how are you defining it? Like, how did you measure that? Like motivation, you just ask somebody, are you motivated? Like, what was your process through that? Look for how it was measured. When you're asked about how did they operationally define, how did they define such and such variable, you're going to talk about how they measured it. Do not provide any definition, like if it's about anxiety, it's like, how did they measure, what was their definition of anxiety? Don't say like, well, anxiety is when people are feeling like a heightened state of arousal. If that's not what it said in the article, don't mention it. Don't give your opinion. Nobody cares about I care about your opinion, but not in this portion of the exam. Often will not be very clearly labeled. You're going to have to look for it in some way, shape, or form. A lot of the practice AAQs I've seen, what they ask for, how did they define this variable? It's not exactly worded how the question words it. You got to do a little bit of digging. We'll see. Third part, interpret the data. What do X results indicate? What can be learned from the X statistic? What does the standard deviation, the R, which is a Pearson's R, which is correlation? What is the p-value, which is, either your study was statistically significant or not? What are the differences in means between these two groups indicate about the sample or about the study that they're working on? If you're having trouble with that, I've disseminated some PDFs, some downloads to if you're a part of my my growing list of people who want to get my PDFs. The one that's called statistical jargon that will help you define all of these things. The fourth part, ethics. Here are the APA ethics. These are all of them. So you're looking for things like informed consent, meaning, did the person agree to be part of your study? You cannot deceive people who are in your experiment. There is an allowable amount of deception that's allowed, but that is not up to you to decide. That is up to your IRB, the internal review board. I've seen a lot of questions recently that are actually referencing the IRB. IRB is a governing body that usually is housed inside of a university who's going to look at your study, assess your study, make sure that you're adhering to all codes and ethics, not putting anyone in danger, not doing and not escaping any one of these things. But you can't deceive people to like make them think that they really just electrocuted another human being until they stopped responding. Milgram study. So thanks to Milgram study, deception is now part of the ethics. Coercion. You can't be like, I'll give you like $10 million if you're part of my experiment. You cannot do that. You can offer your participants something, but it can never be more than the value of participating in your research. Have to guarantee anonymity, cannot be any psychological or physical risk or harm associated, have to abide by all HIPAA laws, and you have to end with some sort of debriefing. Debriefing is just sort of like, hey, so you were just part of my study. Let me tell you about what I was looking at. You're just kind of like going over everything with them. What am I? 5, the fifth part, E, generalizability. Before you decide whether or not the study is generalizable, take another look at the aim of the study. What is it they were looking at? For example, if your sample is all like everyone in the study is 65 and plus, you may be like, no, you can't generalize it because there are much younger people than 65 plus in the world, and we can't generalize that. Well, if their study is looking at medication for the elderly, then you can generalize it, right? But you should specify this can be generalized to individuals ages 65 and above. You can say that. You can say that. You can clarify it just like that. Also, something that I've looked at, first, you want to look at things like your sample size. If there were 3 people in the study, you can't generalize it. Look at the demographics of them. A lot of the examples are like super duper white. Super duper white. Doesn't make it very, it's not very representative of what the population looks like. Study designs, make sure that their study designs are looking good. How is their sampling method? Did they just ask a bunch of their friends, or did they do some random sampling? Measures they used, was it in a lab setting? All sorts of things, all kinds of things could go towards is it or is it not generalizable? When I'm seeing, even when I was looking at the scoring guides for the AAQ in this section, it really kind of, there's no like, no, that's wrong, it's not generalizable. Unless it's like a really horrendous study, I would say it's definitely not. But all it says is correctly supported, it pointed to some evidence to support whether or not they thought the study is generalizable. So as long as you point to some support, because honestly, every single study is like not generalizable in some way, shape, or form. Every single one. So look at it, make your best assessment of it. Does it qualify? Does it pass my sort of like bar? And then make sure that you point to why it is or is not generalizable. And now, does it support the hypothesis? 2 sentences. Yes or no. That's your first sentence. The results of this study supports the hypothesis that, or the results of this study refutes the hypothesis that. Second sentence, show direct evidence of your claim. A statistic might be in there. Show direct evidence. Don't just say because the graph looks like one line is like a lot higher than the other line. No, that does not count. That is not scientific. Give me some actual tangible proof from that study that says for sure that the hypothesis is supported. I have a feeling, I'm not sure, but I have a feeling the same rules are probably going to apply for this question as with the generalizable, as long as you support it. But don't put that in stone. In fact, strike that from the record. Look to the actual evidence that's reported in the study and use that to support. So 2 sentences, yes or no. Second sentence, show me, prove it to me. All right, let's look at a quick example. So read this first before you start looking at the research. Read this first. Using the source provided, respond to all parts of the question, identify the research method used in the study, state their operational definition of executive functioning, describe what the difference in means indicates for the immediate recall task and the multivitamin group as compared to the placebo. Yes, this was taken from College Board. Identify at least one ethical guideline applied by the researchers. Explain to the extent to which the research findings may or not be generalizable using specific and relevant evidence from the study. Explain how at least one of the research findings supports or refutes the researcher's hypothesis that taking a multivitamin slows cognitive decline later in life. So you might recognize this one already. Let's add to the first one. Identify the research method used in this study. You're usually going to find it in participants. If you have my document that I made about how to break down a research article, you know that very, very often, almost always, you're going to be able to find this right in the participant section. A computer randomly assigned participants to 2 groups. Randomly assigned 2 groups. Clearly an experiment. Excellent. Nice job. B, state the operational definition of executive functioning. Let's see. Right in the method section, which is usually where you'll be able to find it. To measure executive functioning, participants were first shown one set of items and were then shown a second set of items. They were asked to identify whether the items in the second set of items were the same or different from the first set of items they were shown. Participants earned a higher score the more quickly they correctly identified whether the items from the second set were the same or different on the original set. So it wasn't about identifying, it was about the speed. So the operational definition of executive functioning is the speed at which they could correctly identify whether or not items from list 2 were or were not on list 1. That's your operational definition. All right, what was my next one? Describe what the difference in means indicates for the immediate recall task for the multivitamin group as compared to the placebo group. Difference in means indicates for the immediate recall task group for the multivitamin group. Oh, as compared to the placebo group. Okay. I'm sorry, I had to get my bearings for a second. I found it here in the results and discussion. It's going to be in the results and discussion almost 100% of the time. I can't think of a time when it's not going to be. Researchers estimate that the effect of the multivitamin intervention improved memory performance in participants in the multivitamin group by the equivalent of 3.1 years of age-related memory changes as compared to the participants in the placebo group. Researchers also found the executive functioning was not significantly impacted by taking the multivitamin. Cool. This is my answer. How do I know that? How do I know? So they did not give a p-value here, which totally annoys me. But I guess that's their right. I don't know whether that was done by mistake or because they don't like us or whether that's cool to do. I don't know. I've written a lot of research articles. I always include my p-value somewhere. Researchers estimate the effect. So what's the question? Describe what the difference in means indicates for the immediate recall task group. Okay. And how do I know that this is the answer? Because I know that this improved memory performance. And then below it says the findings suggest that the greatest benefit to taking a multivitamin group is the immediate recall. Okay. So that's how I know that I'm looking at the second paragraph, first sentence, second paragraph at the bottom right there. Um, that's how I know that what's written above is about the immediate recall stuff. So the difference in means is, it shows that, taking this multivitamin is going to improve memory performance by the equivalent of 3.1 years of age-related memory change as compared to the participants in the placebo group. That's it. I know I'm going fast. I don't have a lot of time. I'm sorry. Identify at least one ethical guideline applied by the researchers. I should have moved these around a bit. Ooh, participants. Typically, we're seeing this a lot. Almost every single article that have been on all of the AAQs that I've seen so far have said something about asking for informed consent, asking the participants for informed consent. That makes me a little nervous because I don't trust College Board. You know what I mean? I feel like because they all have had the same answer, or could have had the same answer if that's what you wanted to point to. I have a feeling on exam day they're going to throw a curveball on this one. So make sure you know all of the other ethical guidelines just in case they do something stupid, like they don't add participant informed consent onto there. But here we can see almost 4,000 participants agreed to participate and were accepted. Agreed to participate, that we can consider to as informed consent. And explain the extent to which the research findings may or may not be generalizable using specific relevant evidence from the study. I pointed to this. So here's their demographics. Look at their age. In group 1 and group 2, almost identical means of age. There were, 2/3 of the group were women, 1/3 of the group was men. Not so bad. Race, white, lots of white. There's so much white people. Majority white. Few African American, handful Hispanic, other races, American Indian or Alaskan Native. So you could go either way. You could say that this is generalizable for people 65 and above who are interested in, you can go either way. Again, I don't think there's going to be a right and wrong score for this. You pick, as long as it's something that's credible, I feel like you're going to score a point. Me personally, I would say this is not generalizable because the majority of participants were white. And majority white is not representative of the population, even 65 and above. It's just not. All right, so there's that. And then, sorry. Finally, explain how at least one of the research findings supports or refutes the researcher's hypothesis that taking multivitamins slows cognitive decline later in life. 2 sentences. I'm going to say supports. Why am I going to say supports? Researchers estimate because of the same spot that we were looking for. What do the difference in means indicate? It supports their hypothesis that taking multivitamins slows the cognitive performance later in life, as shown by the research. The multivitamin group, far outscored the placebo group in the immediate recall test, which is something especially vulnerable in aging adults. I'm just quoting that last sentence on the bottom there. I would say supports. It is. This is a yes or no. I'm pretty sure. It supports that claim for sure. You could add one more sentence if you wanted to wrap it up, just to make you feel nice and warm inside and cozy. But outside of that, everything that we just went through there, I was able to answer in one sentence. One sentence can get you that point. And in the last one, 2. I would say just do 2. Please just do 2. Could you do it in one sentence? You could incorporate the entire thing into one sentence. Please do me a favor. Your brain likes segments. Please break it out into two. One sentence is going to get you 1 point. The other sentence is going to get you the other point. What I have to say, oh, you can't see me. What I have to say as far as what I think you guys should do to prepare for the AAQs. Get used to this research. If you're part of my email group, you've been getting my PDFs that help you break down research. Look at practice free response questions as often as you possibly can. Get used to how research speaks, where to find these things inside of research, and how to. I just had a student the other day who was like, she like started to answer the EBQ within like 6 minutes of me being like, go. And I said, why, how are you answering already? She was like, oh, I just read the results parts. And I said, that's no, 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 no. That's how you're going to get things wrong. You're going to confuse things in your head. You're going to be answering about results of something you don't fully understand yet. So you do have to get used to reading research, understand what the hell you're looking at, how they speak, because it's a very specific way of talking in research. Yeah, and then just try to ask yourself these same questions. You know all the questions they're going to ask. They're going to ask you this: research method, operational definition, results, ethics, generalizability, and hypothesis testing. You know all those questions. I've been suggesting to people that they should put an example AAQ, drop it into ChatGPT and say, can you make me another one of this in the same type, tone of voice, in the same, but make it up, and then ask yourself these questions. It's going to work. It's going to work. Anyway, that's it. Guys, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you. I'm going to be doing so many more like this. Please do not miss the one that I do week of exam. That one's going to be the most important one. I'm going to try to get another one of these out for the EBQ as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate y'all. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.